Now, how is it that we're going to protect you from the crimes of the National Security Agency? They're committing crimes all over the place. Who's going to stop it? Washington, D.C.? Well, no, doesn't look like it. How about the crimes committed by the IRS? How long has the IRS been committing crimes all across America is the question. In 1997, IRS employees, including Jennifer Long from Florida and others, one testified with his face and everything silhouetted and his voice muffled because he was so afraid of retaliation from the mafia, the IRS. He was so afraid of retaliation from an agency of the federal government, the United States government. He's afraid that they will retaliate, maybe even kill him for telling the truth. And you know what they testified to? Jennifer Long, she just came bold right out and said it. This is 1997. You can look it up. It's in newspapers. In fact, one of the newspapers quoted one of the IRS agents and said, if the American people knew what the IRS was doing, there'd be a revolution tomorrow. That was in the newspapers all over the place. So they had all these hearings. And they talked about all these crimes. And Jennifer Long and the other guy behind the partition swore before Congress that the IRS routinely fabricated evidence against citizens who they knew were incapable of financially defending themselves. So you just pay or go to jail. So people would just pay. And they didn't owe anything. But they couldn't fight it. I'm asking you now, who's going to stop that sort of crime? Washington, D.C.? They're not going to. They haven't been doing it. It's obvious they are not going to stop it. Why would any chief of police, sheriff here in California, anywhere, I don't care what county, allow the IRS to come in unfettered in your county? Or allow them at all? We just know. It's been all over the press that they're committing all sorts of crimes, and we're just supposed to allow them in? In 1997, do you know how many IRS employees were investigated for that crime? Not one. Did they fire the guy? Oh no. What do they do in Washington when all these crimes happen? They transfer them over to another department and they move somebody else in, and it's a bunch of cronyism and just change the name on the door thing, and it all keeps going. Okay. I'm asking, who is going to protect you from that kind of criminality? How about the local officials who've sworn an oath in God's name saying that they would? That's a simple process to me. Okay. And when every public official, especially peace officers and sheriffs and chiefs of police, are put into this same quandary. This is Judge John Roll. This is the most amazing judge that we lost 2.5 years ago. Over 2.5. January 8, 2011. Look what he said. Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the law, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. He was incensed that the federal government had the audacity to threaten to arrest us. He really got ticked about that. Really ticked. And this is one of the parts he said to address it. Now, when your local official, when every cop in this country is forced into this same quandary, which one should they keep? Enforce the law or keep their oath? Of course, keep your oath. Nothing supersedes the Constitution and nothing supersedes your word. And no laws in your state or county or whatever can diminish the power and supremacy of the Constitution. So the state of California makes a law saying he can't have a gun. You can't have an assault rifle. What do you need an assault rifle for? Well, the first quick question, the answer to that is, it's none of your business. And yes, you tell that to the BATF and any other government official. We choose what kind of gun to own. We choose what kind of magazine to have. We choose how much ammunition to have and own. Ooh, you have an arsenal in your house. Well, if I do, that's none of your business either. And if I'm a law-abiding citizen, guess what you have to do? You have to protect my arsenal. You have to protect her assault rifle. That's what you promised to do. But don't you see how powerful the question is that Judge Roll presented to us? Every peace officer should ask himself that question. What do I do if I'm forced into that quandary? Don't forget one thing. The oath requires that you know and understand the Constitution. And I'm going to tell you as a little secret. It's impossible to keep an oath to something that you've never read. All right. Now, here it is. This is the threat of arrest. This was in the Brady Bill. I didn't make this up. Here it is. Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act, that's the Gun Control Act, Federal Gun Control Act of 1968, any person who knowingly violates the section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. First time in U.S. history that a law promulgated by Congress carries with it a threat of arrest. No money. No grants this time. A threat of arrest if we fail to comply. And how many sheriffs did this lawsuit? 7. 7. That's a little bit scary, isn't it? And, oh, and did I tell you? We won.
Seats. Y'all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats.
So the bus driver gets off, forgot his cell phone that day. Actually, I think this was a little bit before cell phones. December 1st, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. An American citizen is arrested because she won't give her seat to a white man. She refuses. Did you see the black man sitting next to her? He don't have nothing to do. He's out of there. He gave up his seat like that. Rosa refused. She's one of the greatest American heroes to me. I mean, just an amazing American hero. She could have been lynched. This was pretty serious stuff. The question now, the reason I have this is, what does this mean to us? Well, it means everything. Let me tell you why. We should have never heard of Rosa Parks because of what happened next. You see, the bus driver gets off and gets on the payphone, calls the police, maybe even the sheriff's office. Probably was back in those days. And 2 of them come and they handcuff Rosa Parks and they haul her off to jail. She's booked in just like any other criminal. She's fingerprinted. She's photographed. She has a booking sheet. She's placed in a cell. She broke the law. And all laws have to be enforced, right? Even if they're stupid and hungry and contrary to God's law, we're going to do it. Because that's what we've been programmed to do. We enforce all laws. And this is what should have happened. A constitutional sheriff is at the office when this 911 call comes in from this ignorant bus driver. And the sheriff asked one of his deputies to come with him. He said, we're going to take care of this call ourselves. And the sheriff and the deputy get on the bus, and they walk up to Rosa Parks, and they said, "Ma'am, just what seems to be the problem here?" And she's pretty scared, and she swallows, and she looks up, and she goes, "Why can't we just be left alone?" And this good constitutional sheriff is touched, and he sits down next to her, and he reaches over and he shakes Mrs. Parks' hand. And he says, "Ma'am, what you did here tonight took a lot of courage. And it would be an honor for my deputy and me to escort you home safely." And that's exactly what they do. And they take her home. And they make sure that her husband's shotgun is loaded, just in case they have trouble in the town. And the sheriff also provides extra patrol for the home the next several nights and throughout the day. And the oncoming shifts are briefed to make sure that they're giving extra patrol to the Parks home. That is a constitutional sheriff. And what you want today is a sheriff who knows the difference between enforcing stupid laws and standing for the principles of American idealism that we all believe in and that our country was founded upon. Ronald Reagan said this about our tax system. He just reinforced what we've already talked about, saying how it's totally, what is it? It reeks with injustice and is fundamentally un-American. Our tax system is an injustice. Who is going to protect you from that injustice? Hopefully, the guy that just took care of Rosa Parks. Oh, you don't think it's possible? The first thing that every sheriff in this country should do would be to do exactly what the 400, 500, 600 sheriffs did on the gun patrol situation. Put the federal government on notice. You don't have to kick them all out of the county. You don't have to. In fact, the sheriff doesn't have authority to banish people who live in his county, whether they work for the federal government or the United Nations. You know, now if they're foreign troops, yes. But if you have somebody that lives in your county and they work for the federal government, the sheriff just can't go up to them and banish them. But he can sure put them on notice. And he can do also what Sheriff Brad Rogers did in Elkhart County, Indiana. Our first year at our convention, Sheriff of the Year. Constitutional Interposer Sheriff of the Year, Brad Rogers. You see, the FDA has this mistaken belief that they can go into anybody's home and property and farm and just do spot inspections without probable cause, without due process, without warrants, and just go in and demand that they submit to their spot inspection. Well, David Hostetler was an Amish farmer, and he was passive, and he invited him in, and guess what? He passed all the inspections. They came back again. He passed again. They came back again, and they took his milk and took it off to a lab because there's got to be something wrong here, and they're going to prove it. No, the milk's clean. Passed with A+ on everything. So now the FDA is getting a little bit upset. Has Mr. Hostetler done anything wrong? No. But they're upset. They haven't found anything. They wasted all this time. They got to find something. So they subpoenaed him to a grand jury in Detroit. How's he going to get there? By horse and buggy. That might take a while. So he calls his sheriff. And he says, I'm tired of this. I've been open and honest and submitted, even when I didn't have to. And now they want me to go before a grand jury. The bottom line is, Sheriff Rogers took some action. He put him on notice. He said, FDA, if you come back in my county without due process, without probable cause, and without a duly signed warrant, I'll arrest you for trespassing. Joanne, Does that answer your question? That's it. Okay? And putting them on notice, letting them know up front what's going to happen. And so, what did the FDA, do you think they took that line down? Oh, no. They sent back a letter to Brad Rogers and said, we'll arrest you for felony. Yeah, we'll really go after you, Sheriff. The sheriff calls me and he says, hey, guess what? The FDA threatened to arrest me for a felony. I said, Brad, congratulations. Wonderful. And I said, what'd you do? And he says, well, I was doing my job. I told him to leave an Amish farmer alone in my county. He says, will you help me prepare a response to him? I said, man, that'll be fun, Brad. Let's do it. Bottom line is, after we sent the response off to the FDA sent the farmer a certified letter and said everything had been dropped. No grand jury, nothing. They haven't been back, and it's been 2 years now. You see what one sheriff can do? What if? What if now? Going back to your question, Joanne. What if we had hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of sheriffs doing that nationwide? Yeah. You know what happens? Freedom happens! That's what happens. Leave us alone. Have you ever heard of this saying here before? We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Where could you get such propaganda like that? Sorry, but we're not subject to federal direction. Tell your congressman, we're not. That's the United States Supreme Court in the Mack Prince case. This is the sheriff case. Look at that. Did I tell you the evidence would show that the federal government has no authority? They're not our boss. If this is true, they're not our boss. They can't tell us what to do. If we are not subject to federal direction, the President of the United States, I don't care if it's George Washington himself, cannot issue mandates and orders and commands to the states. Either to your state legislature or to your county legislature. It doesn't make any difference. In fact, just so you don't think this is my opinion, but this also applies to all political subdivisions of the state. It would be meaningless if it didn't, but Scalia, who wrote the decision in this particular ruling, clarifies that at least twice in the decision and says the political subdivisions of the state also are right along with this. What is that going? I should be on already. Political subdivisions are also subject to this rule. Okay? It would be meaningless if, oh, well, he can't tell the state legislature what to do, your governor or your state reps, but he can tell the county commissioners and city councils what to do. No. United States Congress, are they federal? President, federal? Then we're not subject to their direction. We are not. We're not subject to it. It doesn't matter. From the dog catcher all the way down to the president. That's the right order, isn't it? They all take the same oath. They all have to follow the rules. And the rules are the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's the rules. We all promised when we took any job in government that we would follow those rules. Okay? This is one of them. More of the decision. Okay? It is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. Although the states surrendered, scratch that word. The states didn't surrender anything when we formed the new federal government, did we? What does the 10th Amendment say that we actually did? The 10th Amendment uses a different word. It's not surrender. It's delegated. We delegated. We didn't surrender. We delegated. And there wasn't many powers, was it? It was few and discreet and enumerated. But Scalia makes a big comeback right here when he says this. Delegated some powers to the new federal government. They retain, the states retain a residuary and inviolable sovereignty. If we were inviolably sovereign, like it says we are, it's only that way if we enforce it. Who's going to enforce state sovereignty? I know you know this, Congressman. Barack Obama is going to choose a state sovereignty czar so that we can protect him. No? That's probably not going to happen, folks.